Good morning and welcome to Jasiri. Now, this is your spot for real talk, good vibes, and everything trending. It's day 7 of the #EndBadGovernance protest, and things have quieted down across the country, except for a few hotspots still in the parts of northern Nigeria especially. Now, yesterday, whilst one of our correspondents was given a live situation report from Ojota, he and members of the crew were harassed by area boys right in the presence of some onlooking police officers. Now, I was covering the news at the time, and it was disconcerting for me to watch, especially the unprovoked hostility and the aggression in the wake of the president's call for peace and calm to be restored in the country. Let's take a look. Bennett, good afternoon. Can you tell us what's new around Ojota and, generally in Lagos regarding the protest?
Good afternoon. Well, there's been an interesting turn of events in the past few minutes, or would I say, the past few minutes as a matter of fact. But I'll start from what happened this morning. Upon arriving Ojota this morning, unlike what we've been noticing in the past 5 days, where we get here and then we see security operatives on one side and we see the protesters on the other side chanting songs of solidarity. Upon arrival today, there were no protesters here, just security operatives. And not just security operatives, but in heightened numbers. So it was like they came out with reinforcement, basically. Vehicles upon vehicles of police officers, trucks of police officers, all armed in their complete, riot regalia, all behind. However, what happened was, rather than allowing us shoot from in front of the actual center of where the protest was going on, the police officers moved us away from that area, and we had to record from several kilometers away from that particular area. So, the police had to explain to us after we questioned them. They spoke to us after we explained to them that we should not be there. All right, admitted to roll on now. All right, so we're being harassed now. We have to go into the vehicle.
All right, Bennett, just take it easy.
So obviously we're being attacked by thugs, and we have to go in. Yeah,
that's fine. You can just get settled in. Bennett, please stay safe. Get settled in, and we can come back to you for updates. Well, I wasn't there, but I saw what happened firsthand. Ladies, what's your reaction to that?
And you felt it, isn't it?
I felt
my
it.
goodness.
I didn't even know what to do at the time.
It's frightening. Watching it, just not even being there, watching from across, it's frightening. Wow. God, no, this country.
It takes a lot to be a journalist in the country, and I say it all the time. It takes a lot to be a journalist in Nigeria because of very special circumstances usually. Area boys, thugs, hoodlums, whatever acronym we have for them or whatever pronouns we have for them are parts of the reasons why when we sit on this table and talk about the protest since they started, we know that this is an intrinsic part of what we experience as Nigerians in situations like this regarding the #EndBadGovernance protest.
The police were there. There were police officers there. There was
And if it were you,
security
what would you do?
As a police officer?
No, if it were you as Bernard, what would you do?
It was me.
I
won't be at work today.
So I've always said that I don't exactly have enough patience, and I think I told Catherine.
No, you are being nice about what you said, blessing.
And producer,
Bookie had asked you, said, no, you have to share your experience with us. She's not ready to share it.
I don't know, but a plank might have come from somewhere in my hand. I don't know.
You mean you would have fought the...
Oh, trust me. But anyways, we have Bennett Akede here, who I think by now a lot of people see him as the hero of protest. And this is not the first time. Bennett has been tear gassed, not once. He has been harassed. He has been, I think even before the protest started, there was an incident with police officers as well. Now, Bennett has joined us this morning to explain what exactly happened and to give us an update, because I know for sure that the matter was swiftly reported to the police command by our our MD, our managing director, Kayode Akintemi, as of yesterday. Bennett, welcome to Jasiri.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Bernard, it's lovely to see you sitting on our Jasiri chair. One would think that you were of the female gender, but it's interesting because usually there are 4 ladies who sit on the table. But we welcome you with open arms. Bernard, please, how are you?
I mean, that's a valid question.
Yes.
I'm not fine. I think I'll put it that way, to be honest. And the reason is, we to a very large extent downplay the effect and the impact of certain things, especially in this part of the world, on journalists. And I think I would use this platform, I have said, if I ever have the chance to speak for journalists. Like you rightly mentioned, Catherine, journalists, especially in the field, go through a lot. Yeah. It's easy to judge them. It's easy to conclude, when you get to see them on TV screen. Yeah. It's even worse when you see comments on social media. You see things like, why this one they talk like this now? Your microphone no good. Or who is this one that is talking? But there is a whole lot that goes on behind the camera that those who are simply watching do not, get to see and talk about. The issue of mental health is very real when it comes to journalists and journalism, because you get to see a lot. You get to cover. There's disaster, there's crisis, there's natural disasters, and there are issues like these, that you get to see. You come in contact with sometimes security operatives who are unnecessarily overzealous, like what happened the day before the protest. There are thugs and touts, like we also saw there, and then in the end, who do you want to speak to? It's, on to the next one. There's a lot that needs to be discussed and unpacked when it comes to journalism in the country and what should and should not be done.
So I know that yesterday, while I was asking you those questions, you mentioned that the team was at a particular spot trying to cover it, and then the policemen there asked you to leave that spot, and then you had to relocate somewhere else. What happened from the time you got to Ojota to the time, and I mean, how did that escalate so quickly, and why exactly did they ask you to leave that spot? Because I was curious about that as well.
Okay, so I would try and be as brief as I can. Yeah. So, the past few days, we go to the protest ground and you have people singing and chanting songs of gyration. And the police on one side, the protesters on the other side, but the police obviously watching and ensuring that nothing goes wrong. Unfortunately, on that day, on the 6th day, which was yesterday, we got there, and the first few journalists we met said, oh, please don't go further, that the security operative said journalists should not come that way. And I was wondering, why should that be? And then one of the senior police officers there, Paul Okafo, I think is the Assistant Commissioner of Police, called on some of us and said, look, that they have noticed a trend that is looking like it's the gathering of journalists that has been attracting the protesters. It wasn't the first time I was hearing that. I said, okay, but we can shoot from a distance here, which eventually is what we started doing. And then later, like it or not, it's protest season, so to speak. Yeah. So people will definitely come. And then the people started coming and, they would say, oh, they're disappointed that the numbers are not as they would have expected. So we had to interview a few of them. Yeah. And with those interviews, of course, more started coming because they actually wanted to come and protest peacefully, might I add, as has been happening in the past few days. Then the police officers came closer again and said, look, this crowd is what we said we didn't like. Yeah. Coincidentally, I was the one who they also beckoned on to come. I was live as at that time again with our correspondent on the business show. Yeah. I was even trying to tell them, look, just give me a second, I'm trying to go live. He said, no, Oga is calling you. The person who called Oga is calling you, I will get back to that person. Yes. Plain clothes police officer, black and white striped shirt, but we knew he was a police officer. Yeah. And then called, I spoke to the guy, said, this is what we're saying. If you guys keep granting these interviews, this crowd will be building. We don't want the crowd. We don't want to have to start to separate journalists from the crowd. So please, Mr. Talking to me, go and talk to the other journalists and tell them not to grant interviews. So I went back, I did my live report, and then I told the other journalists, they're not saying we should not do our reportage, but they say we shouldn't interview people so we don't attract unnecessary crowd. Mm-hmm. Not long after that, then some more police officers came, with all their...
Gotcha.
And told everybody there who was seated, journalists and onlookers alike, to move far away from there. And that, prompted the movement down to Ojota bus stop under the pedestrian bridge. So while they were done, I finished my live report and I went down to Ojota Bridge. This is meters away from the epicenter to do my live report for 12, which Blessings was the one who was presenting the news, There were some police officers who escorted us all the way there to ensure that we moved that way. And I started my live report and then those police officers were not there again. So it was almost like clockwork. So, started speaking and then the rest is history. Yeah. Coming back to the man I said with the striped shirt, while that was going on, he was seated under the bridge. Wow. While we were attacked and harassed, he was seated under the bridge.
This police officer
this plainclothes person was seated under the bridge.
Plainclothes police officer.
So, and when we were going back, we were so furious because we saw him right there.
So, I mean, at this point, it's almost redundant to ask if the police were there, if their presence was there, and if they intervened.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So nothing happened at all. They didn't even try to help.
Nobody intervened. Nothing happened as at that time. We were harassed. I was hit with a pipe in the back. Karina the other camera operator, the lady,
Yeah.
I think she was hit in the face and then her glasses broke. The young man in the bus who was struck on the hand and then his device fell, a digital reporter.
Yeah.
Albert, the camera operator, somebody tried to hit him but missed and hit the camera. Eventually we were pushed in the bus and then they kept banging on the bus until we drove off. I'd like to quickly chip in here that the past few days, right, it's been cordial between the press and the police, I must confess, right? But then again, like the PRO said, there truly are some bad eggs, and that's where I think the problem is. There has to be an even distribution of information concerning what should be done and what should not be done, what is good policing and what is not good policing. Up until today, this morning, even I wasn't clear as to whether journalists had to take permission from the police before doing reportage outside.
Yeah.
The PRO clarified it this morning. We don't need permission. We don't need permission, but there's so many people who don't even know this, including myself. I was confused. I know that we don't, but because of the way things operate, you always have to go to ask a police officer, please, good morning officer, we want to do it. Why do we have to do that?
I said this the other time, that the only people that quote constitutions are ourselves. Like, we're the ones that say we lost it. People do. And this situation especially looks a lot to me like scapegoating, because it's like, okay, let them fall into the bait so that others will see. It's very convenient that the one police officer that wasn't in the uniform is the one that was the one sitting down there, and then every other person was nowhere to be found. And the fact that these thugs were so audacious, it means that they had the backing of somebody. They knew that they wouldn't get apprehended. It's just really ridiculous, because we talk about press freedom. I mean, some months ago, we're talking about a man that, I don't know if you heard the story, that was it was picked up by military men. His wife was trailed for days. It literally felt like a kidnap situation. They followed his wife, found out where her shop was, and then they trailed her to the house, and then they took the man. And it took a lot of journalists to start shouting and ranting, release him before they could eventually release him. Bennett, what do we make of press freedom in Nigeria in this age and time?
Excuse me. There is. I was on the phone this morning with the NUJ president, National NUJ president, hoping to still have an interview with him later today, and he spoke about press freedom as well. There's been improvement. There are strides being made. Unfortunately, these improvements are very minimal, to be honest, and that's where we still are. One would expect that with the several protests we've had, with the several confrontations that the press and the government and security operatives have had over the past few years, that press freedom, there would be some kind of tremendous improvement when it comes to press freedom in this part of the world. Unfortunately, there isn't. Nigeria, compared to some other African countries, it's better. We've got to see that. We've seen African countries where the entire internet is shut down, But then again, in Nigeria, you can't completely rule out, because in the past few days, network has been very poor, and we heard some of the network operators saying that it is due to cables that have been destroyed because of the protest.
Coincidentally.
Exactly.
Because of the peaceful protest.
Exactly. So it all, I mean, it's
all ambiguous.
It's all ambiguous. And then there's so many coincidences that or conspiracy theories that you put together, and you still begin to question press freedom. I think our biggest challenge with press freedom in this part of the country, this part of the world again, is information and then training of the appropriate persons or the appropriate agencies. I bring back again what the PRO of the police said. Journalists don't need to seek permission. To do. Of course, you should not constitute nuisance, like standing in the center of the road and look at me.
Traffic,
But in a case where Bernard goes to the side of the road to do his reportage from Lekki Tollgate, to explain that there's relative peace and calm in the area. But while doing that, the police officer comes and then pulls away the camera operator, takes off his ID card, and it's all happening live on camera. Then you begin to question, where is press freedom? And then it all works together, because you can't now say, these people who did it are not well informed. If press freedom is truly a thing, everybody who is in that line should be informed about it.
All right, so blessings.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of feelings on the table right now. I mean, because it was a very harrowing experience.
Yes, it was.
But yesterday, the New Central MD, Kayode Akintemi, submitted an official letter to Lagos CP reporting the incident of harassment and assault on the crew. Bernard, what can you tell us about two things? How this affected you, honestly, because mental health is important, and you mentioned that when you started talking. How do you think incidents like this or like these will affect journalists' mental health, your sense of safety and security, and your ability to do the job right?
So first of all, unfortunately, somebody said to me that I'm the Statue of Liberty when it comes to when it comes to journalists and press freedom, because everybody's looking like in the past 7 days, guy, you've been like in 3 different things going on. Are you looking for problems? So and that goes to show you first of all that some journalists are already looking and saying, if this is the way it is, I'm not doing it.
Yes, yeah.
Some who are just coming into the industry are afraid and saying, if this is the job, maybe I should look for a different career, And for those of us who are already there, it's beginning you're beginning to question yourself and your choice of career, right? It has to be, and I say journalism is for some people, it's not just a career, it's a, what's the word now? Occupation, profession, or
vocation.
Vocation, it's a vocation, that's the word. Where you just cannot do without being a journalist, basically. So I think the word to others generally is, it tells on the psyche of other people, of other journalists, when they see their colleagues being harassed like this. And then you look at other climes and see that it doesn't happen this way. So why are we different? So what we can do is to continue to talk about this. The agencies, the appropriate agencies, government bodies, organizations, have to continue to talk about this until it someday becomes a thing of the past. And journalism is a noble profession. Journalists need to be respected.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I do understand, as much as we talk about the things that we're facing in Nigeria as journalists, I understand that there are places that also have it worse. There's a particular international media station that has lost about 3 or 4 reporters in the last 2 years. And recently they lost another reporter. And most of these, is usually stray bullets. And sometimes they say things like, it's a war crime. And there's a word they use for it.
Work hazard.
Yeah. And they would literally claim that, they didn't know they were reporters. They didn't know they were there. And, it's just convenient for you to have just shot the person.
Collateral damage.
So my question is, what can be done, either by the media station, by the government, by security agencies, to ensure the security or safety of the journalists? Because now it doesn't even look like journalists have any, we're not saying that we're any different from the people that are coming out to protest, but we have it as a responsibility. We owe it to these people to tell them we're the conduit between the government and the people. So we need to be there to tell these stories. So what can be done to ensure their safety while they're on field?
So first things first, like what the MD of News Central did yesterday is very important. Your staff are harassed. You have to tender a report, to the police station, which is what we did. The Commissioner of Police immediately said he was going to take it up. I've seen the trail on social media. Some people are saying, it's audio service, but at least the needful has been done. This gives the journalist a sense of belonging, that this will not be swept under the rug. At least the organization I work for has taken the first step. It's left for the police to now do their own.
Yes.
Now, sensitization is another thing I always put on the table. Regardless of who you are, where you work, whatever it is you're doing, if there's not enough noise being made about certain things that are wrong, people will not know that these things are wrong. Because it's just going to be such an irony that journalists themselves, who are supposed to be noisemakers, are not making enough noise about things that are affecting them. So there has to be, some kind of sensitization from the parts of the journalists. And then now for the agencies, finally, government agencies, bodies like the NUJ, like whatever bodies that journalists belong to or they're covered, they cannot stop talking about it. The National Orientation Agency needs to continue to talk about these things. If there's war situation, in crisis situation, these are certain people that you cannot touch. Journalists, Red Cross, medical aid. These people will always be on ground to give you information and to help.
So that's a sacrosanct.
This has been quite an insightful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Bernard. Thank you for your amazing insights. We stand in solidarity with you and all the journalists who face challenges during the ongoing protests. We're going to take a quick break, after which Jasiri will be right back. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to Jasiri. We are streaming live on our social media platforms at News Central TV. It's a place to be. Please use the hashtag Jasiri to be part of the conversation that's ongoing. That way we know you're watching. Let's move on to talk about the current civic unrest in Nigeria, which is occurring against the backdrop of severe economic challenges that Nigeria has been facing for several years. Now, among the most pressing issues is the staggering inflation rate, which has significantly impacted the cost of living. Now, as of mid this year, 2024, Nigeria's inflation rate stood at 34.2%, with food inflation reaching an alarming 40.87%. Now, let me paint a clearer picture of what this means in lay figures. A tuber of yam is now about 7,000. A bag of rice is about 80,000 naira. A loaf of bread, 1,900. Now, consider that more than half of Nigerians already live on less than $1 a day and cannot afford a 3-square meal.
Absolutely, yes. The economic hardship over the last year has worsened the situation significantly. There is a popular saying that a hungry man is an angry man, and I think that that also translates to a country, a hungry country being an angry country.
Yeah.
When you add illiteracy to the mix, you have a very, very volatile weapon of mass destruction. Well, since President Tinubu gave the wonderful address that he did a few days ago that detailed all his many achievements, we want to find out if the shoe still pinches us where we've been complaining that it has been pinching us. And to help us have that conversation today, we would like to talk about the nation's food security and overall economic stability. Joining us on Jasiri to discuss this and the impact of food, the impact of the food crisis in Nigeria, we have with us the founder of the Corporate Farmers International Ltd, Akinwale Alabi. Welcome to Jasiri.
Thank you very much.
Thank
it's an honor to join you, beautiful ladies.
Welcome.
Thank you for coming.
It's an honor. Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, let's start with Annie's first question.
Okay.
I was waiting for Annie to land because of the question. Based on your response, it will trigger the question I have. It will put together the question I have in my mind.
Right. So, Mr. Akin, welcome. Thank you for being with us. Can you start by giving us an overview of the End Bad Governance protests from your perspective? Also, how significant these protests can be in the context of Nigeria's history of civic movements?
All right. Thank you very much for that question. So let me start like this.
Yeah.
I remember vividly last year, I think around November, when we were seeing the signals that look, by 2024, we're going to have a real shoot up on food price increase.
Yeah.
I made a tweet out. I said, one of the major determinants of this administration will be food, and that is what's playing out now. Everywhere, if you turn on your TV or radio, the major theme of the protest is hunger.
Yeah.
And what could solve hunger issue is basically food. Food is needed. An average man, what he requires from any government, just let me be able to afford a single meal to put food on my table while I hustle for the rest of it. Now, the main factor of this food insecurity has been on, not yesterday, but a few years ago. But unfortunately, we're not putting much attention to those signals. There were a couple of red lights that were showing us.
As of last year?
Even before last year, during COVID.
Yes.
It started during COVID, when there were basically a shortage and also a break in food production. So the ripple effect kept going globally. But we in Nigeria, we're not paying attention to those things. While some of us were saying, hey, government, something's going to happen, but you need to pay attention to those details. But unfortunately, there weren't much attention. And 2023 was more of election. So much distractions were like, oh, let us face election first before food. Now it's all playing out in the full flesh human. And that is one of the major reasons of what we're having now. Hunger is a major factor. And well, there are solutions to it. There are things we need to do, but there are processes and we need to start now.
Okay, so I'm glad that you talked about the key factor, especially considering the protest at hand. And you've talked about the things we need to do, and we're going to get to our to-do list, as a country.
All right.
But in the meantime, I want us to find out what the causes are. Why exactly are we having this much inflation? Now, according to an NBS report, Nigeria's inflation rate has hit 34.19%, and food inflation soared by 61% in 1 year. This, of course, is a major driving concern, especially for the process, like I said. Can you break down the key factors that are contributing to these unprecedented figures as it pertains to food in the country.
All right, so let me break it down into maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So let me start number 1. In Nigeria,
Yes,
as a major case study. So number 1, let's start with climate effect.
Okay.
That's 1. Then 2, let's start with security issues. Then number 3, let's start with inflation. All right? Then number 4, we now break it into sincerity of leadership.
Wow.
That's number 4. Then 5, we're not paying attention enough. Now, let's take it one after. Now, globally, there's always climate effect. You know, it happens globally.
Yeah.
But again, when there are climate issues, there's always an angle where government needs to play a part and say, okay, we understand that there's going to be rain during this period. What can we do to help mitigate or prevent, you know, so that food production can still be continuous? The major asset food needs is water.
Yes.
That's the major element. Provide water, provide good seedlings, and we're good to go. Yeah? Now, we need to take care and put more attention into climate effect as it affects us. Yeah. Now, if you look at earlier this year, before we start having rain, was later, probably like
it was a late season.
April, May.
Yes,
You know, so that's even in the southern part. Now compared to the northern parts where we produce large of our food. So rain started way late over there.
Yeah.
That is 1. Then 2, let's look at insecurity issues. Insecurity in our farm communities has been there over and over and over. Now, it's high time government needs to pay 100% attention into security of our farmlands. Most of our farmers today have been laid off their farm gate, of their farm estate, reason because every now and then there's always an insecurity issue. Look at what happened in Jos earlier this year to last year, and some other parts of where you have real farmers, rural local farmers. That's where they're dominant. So that's another factor. Then 3, leadership. Now, leadership within the agricultural ecosystem. Is government sincere enough? Is government ready to really support agri sector? Are we putting so much fund into the sector to help develop both the rural farmers, urban farmers, and other ecosystems that surround the farming community? So these are these things that are affecting us. Then funding also is there.
Of course.
Funding is there. So funding also has its own effects. We need to look at how best we can begin to champion PPP, private-public partnership, to help drive enough funding into the agri sector. So when we look at these things, definitely, inflation will still keep shooting up, except we tackle it one after another. And we can do it, but we need to be sincere, and we need to be adequate on what we need to do towards food security.
All right, let's stay with the core sector that you're involved in, the agricultural sector, and we know that it's been impacted. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's been impacted hugely by the economic woes the country is facing. What I would like to ask is that, are there specific areas in the sector that are more affected than others?
Okay, so let me break down the sector into 2. So we have crop production and we have livestock production. Then probably other value chains. So other value chain could be processing, production, logistics, quality assurance, and the like. But 2 major angles, crop production and livestock. Now, both human, us, and animal, we depend solely on crop production. So we need to put more energy on primary production, which is crop production. Now, when we don't put energy on crop production, it affects other dependency on crop. We humans and other animals. What causes elders-farmers clashes is because there is limited resources. Because the same resources we humans are trying to collect, the same thing animals also trying to collect. You understand? So that is why we need to pay attention to primary production, expand primary production. And how can we do that? Now, governments have rolled out different things, intervention funds, support intervention, crop production of seedlings and all that. But again, intentionality of government also matters. You can't just come on air and say, oh, we've done this, we've done that, we've done this. And when you go into rural communities where these things are being done, you can't see anything, or you can't even see the effect. And not every farmer can even afford to even purchase a seed now, which is quite expensive, double the price or triple the price of what it was 2-3 years ago. And that's why today you see a lot of farms shutting down, shutting down massively, because farmers cannot continue to sustain the expenses they incur on the farm operation activities daily. So that's why let me just sell off my farmland and convert it into an housing estate, or convert it into something else, because we can't afford the basic elements. So it will affect feed production for livestock, and also we humans, the little we have, we crumble for it. And that's why when it goes to the market, the price of food you get yesterday will be different from what you get today. So these are the elements that is causing inflation, because we are not paying attention majorly to crop production.
Okay, I'm glad that you also, talked a little about security, because I want to talk about food security. Talking about that, the government recently approved the creation of a new ministry, livestock development, and they inaugurated, of course, as usual, the Presidential Committee on Livestock Reforms, which is chaired by the president himself. And this is supposed to address the decade-long conflict between herders and farmers that you just talked about over the access to land, pasture, and water. My question is this the right thing to do? If it is this the right time? If it is, what is it that the Ministry of Food, Agriculture, Food and Security has not done that this new ministry can do or will do?
Okay, so thank you again for the question. So I've engaged a few people on this particular question, and I said this, for me, I feel it's quite right to separate both ministries. The reason because every country has its own unique way of agricultural practice. For Nigeria, it's quite unique. Now, the livestock industry, as we know, is more run by the nomadics, the Fulanese, the herders. And there is a lifestyle around it. So government is trying to put in or bring in, okay, let's separate the ministry so that we will understand the process flow of the livestock industry and build a complete ecosystem. Do you believe that today you can generate more billions of naira, no, in dollars, compared to crop production? Reason because an average cow has various value chain embedded in it, from the milk to the butter to the leather to the beef itself. Several things you can actually get from that, and it can be done locally and also international. For example, if you look, I'm sure beautiful ladies, you have your leather bags, which are gotten from probably one of the skins of animals. That is an international trade on its own. Big, massive. But again, how do we tap into these potentials? So I agree with the fact that we need to separate it so that we can look holistically into this billion-dollar business and see how best can create more jobs and also encourage technology, around that particular life. Because again, for us in Nigeria, we're not looking towards how we can use technology to drive the livestock industry, just like in Europe or Canada. And we're also doing that with one of our projects. But again, government needs to look holistically on how they can concentrate and expand the livestock industry, either solving problems, rural farmers' issues, using technology to drive the solutions, and also helping to create more jobs among youth that would want to tend towards livestock industry. Because not everybody wants to do crop production. Some has flair for livestock. For example, my daughter, we have a small rabbit in our house. She wants to do rabbit, basically. And it's all very funny. Started with watching cartoon, Bonnie, and like, look, Daddy, I want to own one. Okay, I said, okay, what we're going to do is, I'll take it to a rabbit farm, understand how it's been done. And today, she's been able to make, as she's 8 years old, and she's able to do good, quiet business with a rabbit farm in her house.
Wow.
And that's, at least we used part of the proceeds to pay our school fees last year.
Oh, you're kidding?
Oh yeah, I'm not kidding.
Well done.
That's her money right there. She's working for money. Love it.
So everybody has their flair. We need to concentrate. Also, we need to use how we can use technology also to drive it. We have young, amazing folks today that have developed solutions like Roma and other solutions that are helping us to bring technology to drive the agri sector, livestock industry. So we have a lot of potentials. But again, intentionality, government support, partnership. We need all these things to help drive the sector very well and get all the benefits around the entire ecosystem.
Well, we like to throw a blanket on the federal government. Everyone's always blaming the federal government. Oh, the federal government's not doing this. The road is bad as the federal government. But let's take a look at the parts that state governments play. Shouldn't state governments be also under this mandate to provide food and security? What do you think state government's roles, what do you think the state governments can do?
Thank you for asking that question.
That's instead of federal government.
I get you. And for me, I'm going to break it down into three. And I'm going to start from the local government. And I'll give you a typical example. I remember when I was serving like 2 decades ago in Kebbi State. I served in a community called Zuru Local Government. It's a more in Zuru in Kebbi State. And I remember then I work with the local government. As at then, there wasn't technology like we have now. The local government chairmen keep records, keep manual records of the farmers he has in his community, what they produce, the tons they produce, to the extent that even have the number of wives they have and the children, because these things are elements that help at the local level. You understand?
Yes.
And if government is bringing intervention, support, they know, okay, Megida is producing soya beans, or you're doing rice, or you're doing beans. So it knows what to give each farmers. That is proper record keeping at the local level. Do we have that today? I doubt it. I doubt it. Now, take it to the state government. State government has the potential to support their farmers at the state level, because state government owns the land. You understand? Across all 36 states and the FCT. Now, the question is, how many state governors are intentional about agricultural productivity today in Nigeria in 2024? Very few. Permit me to mention a few. Now, I've been able to work with a few of them within the Southwest, and I could mention that state like Lagos, despite the fact that it's more of, it's basically the smallest among other states in the country, the governor is still quite intentional about agricultural productivity. Despite that we can't produce so much, but we have the market. The biggest market today across West Africa hub is in Mile 12.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it's in Mile 12. And it means that virtually most of the produce you have in another part of the country comes to Lagos.
It ends up at
Mile 12. So it means that we have the strength in creating a food market. And that's actually today Lagos is building the biggest food logistics hub somewhere in Ekpe, which would take over average millions of food. And that is a government that is intentional about food productivity. That is one. Then two, take it to Ogun State government, for example. They have the land. And quite enough, the government is also trying his bit in ensuring that he helped to cultivate more land where younger agripreneurs can come in and be part of the ecosystem. So that takes us to the intentionality of governors.
And working in hand. Okay, states may not have everything, but they can work hand in hand. You have the land, you have the market, you have the this, you have the that. Let's make it work.
Absolutely. Actually, Akin, there's certainly a need for long-term strategies. And we can talk about the things that we can do in the immediate, but this is a long-term problem and it needs long-term strategies. Just quickly before we go on a break, what do you think we can do to ensure the stability of food prices in Nigeria? Because that's what people are talking about.
Just hold that thought so we can. So I don't want to interrupt you when we come back. So just hold the thoughts. Think of your answers. We're going on a short break. You're still watching Jasiri. When we come back, of course, it's going to answer the question. So stay with us.
Okay. Welcome back to Jasiri. We've been having a very, very good conversation with Mr. Akin. Thank you so much for being with us. Just before the break, we asked a question about long-term strategies to address this food crisis and the prices of food in the market, because people are hungry. That's their first concern.
All right, thanks again for that. So in terms of a long-term plan, so number one, if I'm the president today, I will mandate all governors to ensure that a certain percentage is set aside for farmers. When I mean farmers, I mean active farmers who are on the field, in ensuring production goes in 24/7 round the year, non-stop. Despite the fact that we have more or less one season farming in Nigeria, we can do 2-3 season farming. It's all about water. Water is the major element. That is number one. Then two, there's need to provide or create policies that will encourage private partnership into the sector. Agriculture is quite risky, we agree. But again, when this risk is well tailored, you will be able to know what to plant, when to plant it, and actually determine the amount you sell. So everybody makes profits at the end of the day. So even I'm producing a particular commodity at 10 naira. So if I'm taking to the market at 12 naira, I'm making 2 naira profit, and I'm providing food for everybody. Those are the things. Or even seeds. Government can say, okay, because of the fact that there's inflation, the cost of seeds had improved. I'm going to buy number of tons of seed for my farmers and provide it for them at a subsidized amount so that they can continue production and also make food available at the end of harvest season. When we can put these policies together, I'm sure these things will be solved. But again, it still bottles down the intentionality of government. Is government intentional? My own is, I don't think so. Just few of them.
Well, I mean, according to CPI report,
all right,
prices of food, just essential commodities, it's shot up by, I think, about 32.8% in just 1 year. That's astronomical.
Yes.
And you just talked about policies and things like that. So the government is trying to make some policies. I think they've talked about taking off importation tax from certain things for about 150 days. They've purchased tractors. They've purchased trucks, about 1,200 tractors, 2,000 trucks, to help with, bringing food in and all of that. Okay, so these are policies.
Yeah.
Are they effective? Are they showing any signs that this is going to help us in the market? And in terms of how long this has been going on, is there any response in the market?
So in totality, I wouldn't want to condemn the government. They are trying their own bit through the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. Yes, I give it to them. But again, are we doing enough? No, we're not. Now, are we late? Yes, we are late. These things, as I said, some of us have seen it many years ago. Last year, we've seen the signals. And we've said, look, let's start preparing for farming season so that when these things are available, it is easier for us to continue production. But again, there was complete lag. Now, we're now start running Elsa Scatter at a late hour. Now, this is August. We're going to have August break very soon. And after August break, we move into dry season farming. How many states is ready for dry season farming? Then what is the requirement for dry season farming? It's basically water.
Yes.
You need to begin to develop automatic irrigation system. How can you have water to access your farmland? These are the things I want to begin to discuss now, because in a couple of months, we're going to move into Harmattan and rain stops, but food is still in demand. How do we now meet that gap? That is the conversation. That is what we need to do. So I feel that government knows what they need to do when they are intentional and serious about it.
All right, so I know we've touched on a lot of issues, but my question now would be, where does the middleman stand in all of this? Are they the saints or are they the sinners? Between the middleman and market routes, how do they contribute to the hike in food costs?
Now,
and how can the influences be reduced?
So the middleman, for example, has a whole lot of role to play, and I can't blame the middleman again. The reason is this: let me say I'm a food merchant, and I play a middleman role in moving commodity from either Kano down to Lagos. Now, the cost of petrol, probably that I used to move with sometimes last year, was the cost of moving transport. Let's say I move my commodity from Kano to Lagos. Maybe I move it by 20 naira last year. Now, in 2024, because of the increase in fuel price, I'm moving the same commodity for 60 naira. You could see that difference. I'm just using just simple arithmetic for us to understand. Now, if I'm going to sell that to the market, I have to consider every cost element into it. Now, that part is very difficult. We need to understand that cost of fuel and cost of other factors within logistics has affected the cost and the cost elements on food in the market. But what can we do? Now, today in Nigeria, we solely depend on road system for moving our commodities. Why can't we channel up and open up other means of moving our commodities? We have a rail system, economical, faster, cheaper, and easier. So we can move commodity as fast as possible, as easy as possible, to every location as fast as we can. For example, road transport. I'm moving tomatoes from Jos to Lagos, and it gets to Jeba, and the trailer stops. It might be there for like 3-4 days. It'll be tired, battery, everything spoiled. And remember, tomato has a lifespan shelf. And each day there, it keeps devaluing. And probably when it now gets to the final market, it's gone. So we need to open up other channel of transportation, of moving our commodities into the market, so that it can reduce the price elements of purchasing these things that affect us as individuals in our homes. That is just what I see.
All right, Akinwale, just one final question, and that's about the long-term implication. Okay, you know what? Unfortunately, I can't take the question because we're running out of time.
Okay.
Because I just saw the question, and it's a long one, and it's going to require a comprehensive response. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been a very interesting conversation and eye-opening, I must say. But I would say that, our eyes have been open to this for a long time.
I was just thinking that we might have to have you come back.
No problem.
I was thinking he has to come back. It's not a conversation that can just end here. This is the reality. And I was very interested in Blessing's question. So maybe we can please, sir.
I will.
Oh, trust me, I remember.
Thank you so much for coming and
Thank you very much.
and giving
It's
such
an honor.
insightful answers.
Yeah.
Because I feel like us here and the audience as well, we've gotten some insight that we didn't even know about before. So thank you so much, Mr. Akinwale.
Thank you very much.
To everyone who has joined us today, it seems like this is all that we can take for the episode. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for spending this time with us.
Don't give her the chance to say.
For me and the ladies.
Thank our lovely guest, Mr. Akinwale Alabi,
Thank you.
for spending this time with us.
Thank you. For me and the ladies.
From me and the ladies, just
She did that.
back
Goodbye.
tomorrow. This is okay.
Don't listen to me. Don't pay attention to
me
this.
and the ladies.